So my name is Kia Roberts, and I'm the founder and principal of a company called Triangle Investigations. And Triangle is a group of expert investigators conducting misconduct investigations within workplaces, schools, and other organizations. So think sexual harassment, discrimination, retaliation, bullying, kind of the full gamut of misconduct investigations. Prior to founding Triangle, I was the first ever director of investigations at the NFL, where I did the investigations for NFL players and employees accused of violating the NFL's code of conduct. Prior to that, I spent about a decade in the DA's office, the district attorney's office here in Brooklyn, New York. I finished my time there as a homicide prosecutor. I got my law degree at Vanderbilt. I got my undergraduate degree at Duke. I grew up in New Orleans, and I live in Brooklyn now, where I am homeschooling with my husband and my two little kids. My inspiration is actually a weirdly specific story. So we welcomed baby number two in like spring of 2018. And I was up in the middle of the night with her, and I was reading an article about how the Me Too movement was making all these different impacts throughout different industries. And I was reading a specific article about how the Me Too movement had really impacted the restaurant industry in a really big and tangible way. And this was an interview with this very celebrated chef named Gabrielle Hoffman. And she was saying that she felt that the Me Too movement had impacted restaurants so much because within a restaurant, there's not a real framework for reporting or investigating sexual harassment and discrimination and retaliation and bullying. And because that framework wasn't there, these type of things were allowed to fester. So I thought that was really interesting, that this like light bulb moment at like 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm up with the baby. And I just thought, based on my background, that I was uniquely positioned to set up a shop where misconduct is all that we do. So whether you're a traditional workplace, where everybody's coming in, sitting in desks every day, you might still need to outsource investigations depending on what the allegations are. Maybe your HR department doesn't feel comfortable dealing with allegations involving high-ranking members of your organization, or maybe you're a high-end restaurant group with 500 staff, so let's say waiters, waitresses, maitre d's, cooks, chefs, and you don't really have that function there to report misconduct or to investigate misconduct when it occurs. So I set up this whole misconduct shop, and so I got that little bit of inspiration in May 2018, in the middle of the night, and then Triangle was born a short time later. So ours is kind of organic and very hyper focused. So we've had some very, very, very happy clients. We've had really good experiences with the clients that we've had thus far, who have really shouted our praises from the rooftops and gotten us a really good and consistent stream of new revenue coming in via referrals. I also have worked with an amazing business consultant that's helped me create a really strategic LinkedIn campaign. So not what she calls spray and pray, right? Spray and pray is when you send a million emails to people and messages on LinkedIn and hope that someone responds. This is a lot more strategic, where we're looking at specific organizations and doing a really good drill down on who needs our services based on the organization size, or maybe lawsuits that have been filed in the past, or even stories that are breaking in the news at this moment about having really bad atmospheres and toxic workplaces, and then engaging in really targeted and focused outreach to those organizations. Clients contact us in a few different ways. So there's instances where an instance of misconduct has already occurred. So someone has already been bullied or discriminated against or sexually harassed or retaliated. And then we're coming in and doing that investigation after we've been notified of it, and we're doing it. We also offer our clients usage of an app that I've developed, and that's on the App Store and on Google Play, and it's called Telly. And Telly works as the reporting mechanism for people to report misconduct within their organization. Okay, so let's say that Triangle is hired by a high-end restaurant group in Manhattan. We come to the organization, we onboard all of the employees with the app on their phone, and they're able to access that app either using a 4-digit PIN code or biometrics, either their eye or their thumb. When an incident of harassment, discrimination, retaliation, any type of misconduct occurs, they open the app, click through some screens, and answer some pretty simple questions. It pings through the Triangle on the other side, and we immediately start an investigation. So a lot of companies and organizations are interested in that because sometimes you don't have the function and the capacity to really be able to respond to complaints all day and all night. And this takes the guesswork out of that because the employees or organization members have this app that they can utilize at any time. What's very interesting about that is when I developed Telly about 8 or 9 months ago, of course, we did not know that the coronavirus epidemic was coming. So it's weirdly positioned right now that we do have these very disparate and remote workplaces where there really is no physical HR door to go knock on to report something, right? So how are you reporting when you're being cyberbullied or sexually harassed or there's inappropriate things happening within Zoom meetings? So there's been a lot of interest from clients with respect to the app at this particular moment and for going forward. And then additionally, employers reach out to us to write their policies. So that could be your social media policy. That could be your workplace dating policy. We are actually in the middle of writing a really robust remote misconduct policy that our clients are really kind of dying and scrambling for because everyone's trying to catch up with, what is okay and what's not okay within the world of Zoom calls and Microsoft Teams as everyone navigates this new landscape. So I worked with some app developers based out of Chicago. The app maintenance is now done by an amazing guy in New Orleans. And it was quite a process. I had a former colleague kind of work as a tech consultant with me, and it was really fascinating, figuring out the screens, what they were going to say, wanting to make it as user-friendly as possible. So when I was meeting with my app development team over the course of time that it took us to create the app, one of the stories and questions that they kept asking me was, who is your ideal user, right? What's your user experience? And to me, my user was someone crying in a bathroom stall after 2 glasses of wine at the holiday party because they'd been groped, right? So I know that sounds hyper specific, but I really wanted to think about what's an app that person within that moment could use easily and quickly, and that could put us in place to respond to things as quickly as possible. So it was a really interesting and fascinating experience, and we're excited about the app, and a lot of our clients are too. Right. So our growth at first was really through word of mouth and connections and people that I knew, just personally. So a lot of really good client interactions, potential client interactions, face to face meetings, and then you just kind of wait and it starts to trickle out. In terms of growth, we're growing, we're growing, we're growing. We're doing really, really well right now, and it seems like in my opinion, at this particular moment, the mouth to mouth referrals seem to be generating more business in this moment than more the digital marketing strategies piece. So I'm still trying to kind of firm that up and get that launched so that's functioning at a really high level. So within the next year or so, I definitely see us hiring some new employees. The people that have worked with me thus far have been more of a consultant basis. So the people who did my launch PR, which were wonderful, my app developer who's based in New Orleans, who's also wonderful, my business consultant, so it's kind of more outsourced little chunks at this point, but where we're getting into the territory that it's going to be time for us to start making some full-time hires for sure. It's a very fine line to balance. One thing that I read when I first launched the business that really stuck with me was about being really diligent about scheduling your days, right? And not letting it get out of control where you're kind of with your kids, you're kind of with your husband, but you're also answering emails on your phone and you're on calls here and there, just really structuring your day to keep a really good line of demarcation between work and business. One thing that's been hugely helpful for me is really setting times that's phone down, right? Phone down, no emails. There's been all these studies about how much productivity has been lessened because of like our attachment to these digital devices where we're on them every 5 minutes. And I just feel that with our addiction to our digital devices, that line between work and personal has become blurred or non-existent. And the only way to overcome that is to be really, really strict with yourself. Even that includes like hiding your phone from yourself in your apartment or in your house until you can get done what you need to do and then go back to the scrolling and clicking on your phone. So I've found that to be hugely helpful, that this is family time and this is business time. That has been exceptionally difficult on day 66 of the lockdown here in New York. But I'm figuring it out bit by bit. So what I'm finding with the work that I'm doing, not only being a female, but a female of color, it really advantageously positions me for some of these investigations that we're doing, right? So one of the things that Triangle prides itself on with the group, kind of the roster I have working with me right now, is we're very intentional about diversity and who we have working together. And you look at a lot of lawsuits or complaints these days related to sexual harassment or bullying or retaliation, and diversity uniquely suits you to deal with some of those issues. So a woman saying he commented 5 times on the fact that I lost weight and my dress looked really nice, maybe a man would not necessarily understand what that feels like and what the undertones are there. That's not necessarily true, but that sometimes might be difficult. As a woman having that shared experience, I think that that helps with things. We're also uniquely suited and really trained up on issues related to discrimination, retaliation, and harassment with communities of color and the LGBTQ plus community. So we're really tuned into those issues because we never want to be in a situation where a person has been harassed or threatened or bullied and they're having to explain to the investigator why that was offensive, right? You don't want to have to do that work and explain why it was offensive that this person commented on your hairstyle or about your partner or about your sexual preference. So we're really trained up and we've really done the work, and are uniquely suited to have that really high level of emotional intelligence when handling these investigations. So we were like kicking around names and I was going back and forth. And I was considering that when you approach these investigations, you want to approach it completely mind open, unbiased. Let's see where the facts and the evidence leads us. And I was talking to my husband and saying, there's so many angles to these investigations. You have to consider this person's angle and this person's recollection. And then my husband said triangle. And I went to college at Duke, which is in the Triangle area of North Carolina, and I loved Duke. Like, had the best time. Loved it, loved it. So then the name just came together and Triangle Investigations was born. So I'm going to give my husband the credit for that. So I think that my time at Duke at Vanderbilt was hugely important in terms of really kind of setting such high standards and that the sky was the limit, right? So being at Duke for undergrad or Vanderbilt for law school, you were constantly interacting with alumni that were coming back to campus or at events that were doing some really, really cool and really interesting things, right? And I think it was helpful, not only in the education that you received, but in setting this mindset that like, I can do that. I can do this, I can do that, because you saw alumni functioning at such high levels and doing so well. And I think that that was really important in my development and growth and in setting goals for myself. I think there was a I think there was a line of thought for a while that if you don't know what you want to do, just go to law school. That's a good degree to have and figure it out later. I actually don't agree with that. I think you really need to want to be a lawyer to make it through law school, right? It's difficult. The LSAT's difficult. The bar is very difficult, right? And not only that, but the crushing amount of debt that people leave law school with, right? So you want to be really cognizant that that's what you want to do. Um, I think that with respect to law school, when you get there, you really need to be mindful of what you think you want to do. Not walking in the door because you don't know what you want to do, but as you start to feel your way through different classes, you see, I'm really interested in this, and I'm taking this advanced level course, and this is the path that I should take. I got really, really interested in criminal law when I was at Vanderbilt for law school and had a criminal law internship one summer, and I just had a wonderful criminal law teacher that really kind of piqued my interest in that particular area of the law. And then, of course, left Vanderbilt to be a prosecutor in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. So I would say don't go to law school with any preconceived notions, see where things lead you, and then kind of think about what area of law is best for you. With respect to entrepreneurship, this was a quote that I read early on when I was just getting up and running, and it was that all big things start small. And that's such a good thought, right? You have just these juggernauts and these giants within so many different industries, and you're looking at them and, these startups that become unicorns and they've raised $1 billion in funding. And, in your first months of business, you're kind of stumbling, you're tripping, and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I think it's easy to get discouraged, but just reflecting on the fact that all big things started small. Every CEO and startup founder had to go through the same process of learning that you did, and you just have to keep going. So I think it's interesting because I do consider what I do to be somewhat service based, if that makes sense. So I see it as being a good thing, like a good act that I'm doing in the world to help make environments as harassment free and misconduct free as possible. So whether you are a student, or whether you're in a workplace, or whether you're a wait staff at a restaurant, everybody wants to be treated with respect and with dignity. And I see our work as helping towards this. So whether that's us coming in there and investigating something when it's occurred, that's satisfying because that can help kind of recalibrate and reset the tone in an organization that's having issues with misconduct. Whether it's a company calling us before something happens and just putting us on retainer to be in place when something occurs, that helps us to kind of set the tone and the culture within a workplace and in an organization. So I see it as being a service, and I feel like it's really good work that we're doing. And it's important work and it helps people. Keep going. It will not it will not all be smooth sailing. I can promise you that. I was listening to actually an inspirational podcast that I listened to the other day, and they had this whole piece about how many times Walt Disney went bankrupt and that he had a nervous breakdown. Things that like I did not know, right? And it was talking about like his path. And um I think sometimes very successful entrepreneurs and startup founders don't really share what the journey was like, right? You see what it was like when they got there and they've got all the investment and the funding and they're making this much a year. But I would just say, just keep going. No one's story has been easy and bump free, and yours won't be either. But if you just keep at it, you'll get where you want to go.
Thank you for watching The Sarah Scoop Show. Head to sarahscoop.com for more.